showing them that we can provision an environment, 0 to everything in 15 minutes.
Sven Knop.
Thank you. So before I start the talk, I have to make a few confessions. One of them, James just alluded to, I am not the founder of Perforce, and this is not my story. I'm just the historian, so to speak, today, telling a little bit about how the company came about. Because of the confusions with whether we're going to speak or not, I didn't actually have the slides ready until last night, so they're a bit thrown together, and I haven't practiced them either, so please excuse the stumbles going across that. And the third problem is I have a stinking cold, so my voice is a little huskier than normal, although my wife would disagree. Anyway, no further about, this is a talk about Christopher Sewald, Esquire, who is the CEO and founder, and this is not a very good VGA. I think you can halfway recognize him, at a Perforce conference, who founded the company. And this story starts, as most good stories do, in California at a company called Gras. Anyone heard of Gras? Yay, a few of them, excellent. Very good. Gras is was a provider of a relational database. At one time, they gave Oracle a fright and thought they were going somewhere, and then they disappeared. Fair enough, I think they're now in the hands of a company called Oldton or something like that, which is also the owner of the company that I used to work for, I was Versant. Anyway, so Christopher, coming fresh from Berkeley, started working at a company, first as a QA person, also responsible for porting software across the different platforms. As part of that, he found that Make is a terrible pain in the behind, so he decided to write a new one called Jam, which stands for Just Another Make. He's still quite famous in the C++ community for that. In fact, if you ever dealt with Boost, the Boost Jam that is used to build Jam comes from him. Just to tell you a little bit about what Christopher was up to in his times, one of his jobs was to transfer the software over to a System 5 from BSD. System 5 at that time had no TCP IP stack. It was supposed to put things on tape, move across the room, put the tape in, and then install the new software, which was rather boring. So he got out the soldering iron and a few cables, opened the bottoms of the where the computer was standing on, laid the cable across, soldered a connector together, wrote a driver and serial driver on one side and TCP IP driver on the other side, and transferred the data this way. Tells a little bit about his mindset, how things are put together. Now, this is a story about version control. And versioning software at Gras was using RCS. Who has used RCS before? Fantastic. Who has used SSS before? Beware. So for those of you who don't know that, I don't want to go into too much detail because it's very technical. SSS came with Unix at a very early stage. It was a way of versioning software, stands for Source Code Control System. And it basically stores the original version of the file you put in there, and then afterwards stores changes, deltas, to the file into the document. As you progress, as you make more and more changes, it takes longer and longer to get the data out. It's rather boring, and it's a horrible piece of software. RCS did the opposite. It stores the latest version of the file in there, and then goes back in time so you can find out the original versions, but it's much faster to retrieve data from it. Now, RCS is great, but RCS is meant to be storing data on your own local machine. That's not good for collaboration people together. People have built all kinds of hacks around it. One of them is CVS, for example. CVS didn't exist at this time, so these two gentlemen, that is Christopher and Roger Horbach. Christopher is much younger in this picture. He looks about 12. I think he was 19 or something like that. They sat down and they wrote a little adapter around it that made the remote execution to start our RCS and had a ASCII log file that kept track of the changes in there. And as additional benefit, had the ability to store atomic change lists across several changes in that. That was good. Worked fine. Of course, that ASCII file grew and grew and grew, which made things slow and slower. So, as usual, there had to be a better way. Well, they're working for a database company. You put the stuff into a database. So, they put the data into a database. Christopher sat down and wrote the second version of that. Bunch of scripts and executables around that still used RCS to store the data, but the database, English database around it. Now, the original piece of software they wrote was renamed from RRCS to Piccolo. So obviously, this version became Piccolo 2, and the executable they wrote was P2. P2 worked great. All the software they wrote within Ingress, and still do to this day, it's now an open source company and they still use Piccolo, was based on this P2. And they were rather successful, so they decided, we're going to open source this. With Berkeley, we'll do an open sourcing of this stuff. So they approached their management in 1994. That turned out to be bad timing. Anyone here from Computer Associates? Thank God for that. If you know Computer Associates, you know what I mean by this. Computer Associates came along and snapped up Ingress. At that time, Computer Associates really deserved the reputation. It went off and bought companies and stripped them and basically took them for a customer base or something like that and threw everything else away. Okay, so that was that. Christopher and his team was actually asked to stay. It took him about, let's be fair, 5 minutes to decide to go. So what do we do next? This is team, and almost everyone in Ingress left at that very time. It's the reason why Ingress is now a 10-man shop or something like that as part of another company. And he joined up with another fellow called Peter Krebs, who still sits in there somewhere in our annals of our software as someone who contributed. He's long gone. And I thought, this business of these Piccolo we built, that was great. I think more companies could use this. Let's go off and take the side project. That's the reason why I pitched this talk to James in the first place. And use this to make your own company. So the first thing I did is they approached Walter F. Teike. Walter Teike is the original author of RCS. This licensing was not as friendly as it could be. It was on the BSD license. And he said, can we use this software to build something for enterprises? And he said, no. So they went off and rewrote RCS themselves, line for line, creating a new piece of software that allowed them to store stuff in RCS. And based on that, they then created a new piece of software. The first check-in actually happened, we have double-checked this when I sat together with Christopher 2 weeks ago, on the 25th of January 1995, which makes Perforce effectively 21 years old. Anyway, in October 1996, P3, obviously, Piccolo, P2, P3 was created. And now come a bunch of lucky breaks. So rule number 1, if you create your own company, what did Napoleon say about his generals? I don't want clever generals, I want lucky generals. You have to have this piece of luck. This was the first piece of luck. A company called Data Tools bought the first license. With the honor of being the first company that does so, they got a perpetual license. Forever, free, all new versions, no further maintenance, anything else, and for any number of users they have. They bought this for $10,000. They were asked the first dollar of that to be paid in cash so they could put it on the wall. But because there were two of them, the company decided to send them a $2 bill instead. This is a copy of the very $2 bill that they sent. It still hangs on the wall at Perforce. They also provided services. They do backup, Data Tools backup services, and the they have ported the software across all kinds of machines and hardwares. And they gave Perforce the ability for free to port the software across all these different platforms. And they were benefiting from it because I meant they could take the software across all these pieces. And the second lucky break was that Data Tools was acquired by BMC Software. We had to look at the contract and said, we assume this perpetual license of yours doesn't go across. I think we will buy licenses from you. It's a good thing because they have several thousand licenses now before, so we would have lost quite a bit of revenue than otherwise. So they, on a deal, decided to buy licenses. Good. So we have money, we have a product, and it's time to incorporate the company. Let's go off and incorporate a company, and we call it P3. Or not. Because it turned out the name P3 was taken. So as soon as they filed for incorporation, they got a cease and desist, go away, this is our name. So we had to come up with a new name. So P3 became P4. And now we had to find a name. P4 is not a very good name and it can't be protected. What do we do with that? So the requirements for a new name was, had to start with a P, had to be a proper English name word, and it had to have a free website, a flat domain available, so we can put it up. So the name come, as you can guess, Perforce. Now, many of my American brethren pronounce this wrong. The emphasis on the force, it's Perforce. Can we try this together? Come on. Perforce. That was miserable. Try it again. Perforce. That's better. Okay, so, Perforce, yep. Which is a proper English word. It's used to mean by necessity or inevitability. Inevitable. You find a lot in Shakespeare, so if you look up some of the Shakespeare works, then as you like, your tempest or something like that, you can find Perforce in there. It's a bit annoying because I subscribe to a Twitter feed that whenever the word Perforce shows up, I automatically get an email. And there are some jokers out there who just love to quote from Shakespeare for some reason. And I get these random quotes coming in, sometimes in Japanese and Chinese as well, with the word Perforce showing up in the middle of that. And okay, this is not relevant. Let's go on. All right. That's a second lucky break. If you know a little bit about Perforce, who of you, by the way, knows the company? That's not very many. And we've been around for 21 years. You know, do me a favor and just touch your left or right pocket. Is there a smartphone in there? Okay, every single component that goes in every single smartphone on this planet is lived in a Perforce server. Every chipset that is based on these components has lived in a Perforce server. Every smartphone designed has lived in a Perforce server. So, shh. And another shh for that. When I was told about this, I was told I was never ever supposed to speak about this until someone from that company came to me and said, "Oi, we know your software, we use it as well." So here's the second lucky break. In 1999, we were approached by an unnamed company and said, "We like what you're doing, how much do you want?" I said, "What do you mean?" "We want to buy your company." "No, you're not." "Okay, what can we buy?" "Huh? You want to buy a source code?" "Sure, we buy a source code." And they gave us some money. That source code still lives on as the name Source Depot, which some of you might know. Some rather unimportant pieces of software like Office and Windows have been built with that. You can guess which company that was. Okay, so that provided the basis for what Perforce is these days. So where are we now? I'm not sure if you're familiar with Michael McIntyre. Comedian Michael McIntyre? Yeah. Have you read his autobiography? It's a worthwhile read. It's kind of a funny read. Now, if you read through that, it gets to the point where he finally is a famous comedian presiding in the O2 and something like that. That's the last 2 pages of the book. Because he says himself, once he actually run through all the steps and all the problems that he had, and actually get to where he wants to go, life became more boring. There was not much to tell. We spent lots of time in hotels and going on shows and other bits and pieces, going to struggle the point of view. So ever since this, Perforce has been growing. It's now 250 people, make over $50 million revenue. We reside in this building here. I found this is the original drawings from the architect that built that. We used to live in this little annex over here. That was the whole Perforce office. That was office number 3. The whole thing's now office number 4. Houses 150 people in there. And that's where we are. Right. Now, I named this title, I know, not a unicorn. Why did I do that? So what's the title? Perforce is a private company. It has never taken any outside money. It's been profitable ever since the start. Which means it lived through interesting times. Y2K bug, we stored our years in 4 digits in the first place. Year 2000 crash, which took the company that I worked for down. Perforce survived without any problems. 2008, not much an issue either, because we were not exposed to external money. I'm trying to start a meme about this unicorn thing. You're aware of this whole unicorn, people to avoid with the initial capitalist VC funding with the unicorn. I think unicorn is the wrong word. I think what you're looking for is a prince. And they're going to kiss an awful lot of frogs before they get kids. And most of them turn out to be toads. So whenever you think unicorn, think toads. All right, I'll leave you one piece of advice. These are the Perforce commandments. Perforce is an older piece of software, despite the fact that it's being heavily developed and used by 6,500 customers, but more than 400,000 people actively working with that. So there are lots of Easter eggs in there. One of them, P for help, gives you help about what's going on in the command line. One of them is P for help commandments, which you can't find anywhere until you actually ask someone like me to dig it out of that. If you type that in, you have a list of commandments. Like we have high standards. We treat each other with dignity and respect. We try to live by these commandments. They're hanging on every single wall in our office. It's an aspiration. It doesn't always work, but we certainly try to remind ourselves again of that. So if you ever use Perforce, try to type the command in and find out. And with that, I will finish the talk. Thank you very much.